Lona's Lil Eats is a small restaurant in St. Louis, Missouri, built on 11 years of food, 11 years of regulars, and 11 years of a family putting everything they had into one room, one kitchen, and one dream. Until one afternoon, a customer called. She had tried to order delivery, but every time she typed in her address, the app told her that Lona's was closed, or too far away. Except it was not closed, and it was not too far away. Lona had simply refused to pay DoorDash a commission. So DoorDash listed them anyway, putting their full menu on the app and letting thousands of customers search for them, only to tell every single one of those customers the restaurant was unavailable, silently redirecting their order to a competitor who actually did pay the fee. And here is what that costs a small restaurant. Because while the average independent restaurant generates between $30,000 and $80,000 a month in revenue, delivery now accounts for 30 to 40% of that, meaning at a 30% commission rate. Every single month, a restaurant hands between $2,700 and $9,600 directly to the platform, before rent, before the staff, and before a single ingredient is purchased. For a restaurant operating on a 5% profit margin, that commission does not just eat into profit, it eliminates it entirely. So Lona sued DoorDash in federal court in 2020, describing the behavior as predatory, deceptive, and anti-competitive, designed to coerce restaurants into signing over 30% of their revenue or disappear from the map entirely. But Lona's story is not unique, and it is not even unusual, because it is Tuesday morning in every city in every country on Earth. And the platform running this operation has never cooked a single meal. Think of what these platforms actually are, because they are not technology companies, they are not delivery services, and they are not partners, they are toll booths. It is digital infrastructure inserted between a restaurant and its customer, charging rent on a transaction that would have happened anyway, and then raising the toll once they own the only road in town. This is the frame you need to understand everything that follows, because every section of this story is the exact same toll booth getting taller, the same road getting narrower, and the same restaurants paying more to drive on a road they actually helped build. To understand how the toll booth got built, you have to go back to 2015 when the apps arrived with impossibly cheap food delivery for $1, sometimes $0, and sushi at your door for less than the supermarket. This was not generosity. This was a calculated war of attrition, with Uber alone accumulating over $30 billion in losses, confirmed in its own financial filings, deliberately choosing to bleed money in order to own the market. A Move academic research reviewing Uber's internal strategy documents described explicitly as aggressive expansion over profitability. The math was never supposed to work because the losses were the weapon. Subsidize the food long enough to destroy every alternative, kill the restaurant's own delivery operation, kill the local competitor apps, and kill the customer's habit of calling the restaurant directly. Once those habits were dead, once restaurants had shut down their own delivery systems and customers had deleted every other option, the subsidies stopped, the commissions went up, the fees went up, and the toll booth raised its barrier around an entire global industry, meaning most restaurants thought they were gaining a new revenue stream when in reality, they were being colonized. And here is how much the toll booth costs: 30% off the top automatically, before the owner sees the revenue, before the rent is considered, and before a single staff member is paid. In the federal antitrust case, Davitashvili versus Grubhub, filed simultaneously against DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates, and Uber Eats, the plaintiffs put it in black and white. These platforms charge fees ranging from 13% to 40% of revenue, while the average independent restaurant's profit margin sits between 3% and 9%, meaning the toll booth was extracting more than the restaurant actually made. But here is what makes this a permanent trap rather than just an unfair contract. The restaurants cannot leave the road. DoorDash controls 67% of the US market while Uber Eats controls 23%, meaning together they handle over 90% of every delivery order placed in America. In India, Zomato and Swiggy dominate so completely that opting out means becoming invisible to an entire generation. And in Southeast Asia, Grab and Gojek have embedded themselves so deeply into daily life that the app and the meal are the exact same thought. It is every country with the same duopoly, the same toll, and the same exit that leads nowhere, and this is happening to the restaurant on your street right now. But the restaurant owner only pays the toll on one side because the driver pays it from the other. The platforms sell drivers a vision of freedom, flexibility, and being your own boss. But what they do not say is that the algorithm controls absolutely everything. When you work, what you earn, and whether you still have an income at all tomorrow morning. In 2025, New York's Attorney General secured a $16.75 million settlement from DoorDash after investigators found the company had been using customer tips to subsidize its own driver-based pay, instead of passing tips directly to drivers as advertised, proving the checkout screen telling customers Dashers will always receive 100% of the tip was a complete lie. New York City's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection went even further, releasing a 2024 report revealing that Uber Eats and DoorDash had deliberately engineered checkout interfaces with design tricks to make tipping harder, resulting in a $554 million reduction in tip earnings across the city, where each driver loses approximately $5,800 per year. This was not a glitch, and it was not an oversight. It was a design decision and a feature built deliberately into the product. Over in the UK, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in 2021 that gig platform workers were entitled to minimum wage and paid holiday rights that the platforms had deliberately withheld for years by classifying drivers as independent contractors. Finding their work was tightly defined and controlled by the platform. The freedom was a legal fiction written into the contract to protect the platform's margin, not the person in the rain delivering your food. So, the toll booth takes 30% from the restaurant and engineers the tips away from the driver, keeping the margin extracted from both ends simultaneously, meaning you are funding both tolls every single time you tap order. But the commission and the tip theft are not even the final layer of this trap, because the toll booth does not just collect money, it collects intelligence. Every order placed through the app is a data point, tracking which neighborhood ordered, what cuisine, what time, what price point, what dishes sold, and which ones sat untouched, scaling across millions of orders across every city on Earth. And the restaurants generating this data had absolutely no idea what it would be used for. DoorDash's own head of new business verticals, Fouad Hannan, confirmed it publicly when asked how DoorDash chooses which restaurant concepts to place in its own ghost kitchens, saying they look at what restaurant demand looks like in a specific area and what a burger concept has done in that area. It's that specific. Read that again. DoorDash used years of order data generated by independent restaurants paying 30% commission to identify the most profitable food concepts in each neighborhood. And then they opened their own kitchens in those exact same neighborhoods, competing directly against the restaurants whose data funded the intelligence. DoorDash CEO Tony Xu confirmed the scale of the ambition in a 2025 Fortune interview, stating that with all of this data, they are trying to build the catalog for the physical world, a repository of information that does not exist on Google Maps or ChatGPT, and they are compiling it all for the first time. The restaurant is not a partner. It is a data mine paying 30% for the privilege of being studied, only to be undercut by the intelligence it funded, meaning the toll booth charged you to build the road and then built a faster road next to yours using absolutely everything it learned from watching you drive. Here is what this system looks like after 5 years of full operation. In South Korea, restaurant owners organized mass protests in 2023 against the dominant local platform after it raised commission rates without warning. In Australia, independent restaurant associations have lobbied for commission caps with no success. In the UK, the conversation has reached Parliament. And in the United States, Senators Warren, Casey, and Lujan publicly demanded that DoorDash and Uber Eats explain their hidden fee structures and their ties to executive compensation. Yet DoorDash CEO Tony Xu received a compensation package of $413 million in a single year. The exact same year, the company settled a $100 million lawsuit for misclassifying its drivers, paying each affected driver approximately $130. DoorDash was found to have illegally sold personal data and fined $375,000, found to have stolen tips from drivers and settled for $16.75 million, and found to have listed restaurants without permission while redirecting their customers and sued in federal court. But every fine, every settlement, and every lawsuit is simply processed as a cost of doing business. Because the revenues are larger, the market share is worth more than the penalty. And when you own 67% of a market, the rules become suggestions. So the food still arrives hot, the app still works perfectly, and the rating system still asks you to leave 5 stars, but somewhere in that restaurant an owner is running the numbers for the 4th time tonight because they still do not add up. Record deliveries and record orders, but another month in the red. The venture capital money that made delivery cheap is gone, the local competition designed to be eliminated is gone, and the customer habits it spent $30 billion to lock in are permanent because the toll booth is built, the only road runs through it, and the toll keeps going up. So the next time you open that app, understand what you are actually paying for. You are paying a 30% toll to a cartel that used your neighborhood's restaurants to harvest intelligence, engineered its checkout screen to steal tips from the person delivering your food, built competing kitchens using your own order history, and listed restaurants without permission, only to punish them for refusing to pay to be visible. The convenience is real, but it is subsidized by the restaurant owner who cannot make rent, by the driver who earned $1.45 an hour after expenses, and by 11 years of a life poured into one kitchen that customers could not find because they had not paid the platform for the right to exist on its map. Lona's Lil Eats filed their lawsuit in 2020, and the platform they sued is now worth over $120 billion. The toll booth won.